This is about the day of April 10, 1962, when the world's largest and most expensive merchant ship, the Titanic, was absolutely ready for its maiden voyage. That day, the Atlantic Ocean was extremely calm, and there was no chance of a sea storm anywhere in sight. 1,500 passengers had already boarded the ship, and millions of people were standing on the dock to witness the departure of the Titanic's first voyage. Neither the passengers, nor the millions of people bidding farewell, nor the Titanic's crew knew that the ship, which was about to depart in a short while, had been built with 6 such mistakes that would make it the victim of the worst disaster. Welcome back once again to Journey Unlocked Videos, Nazreen. Today you will learn about 6 such mistakes of the Titanic, the most expensive, most luxurious, and most powerful ship of its era. If these mistakes had not been made, perhaps today the Titanic would be famous not because of its crash, but because of its success. What were those 6 mistakes? Even Captain Edward Smith of the Titanic, with 40 years of experience, did not notice them. Forget the captain's 40 years of experience. These mistakes were not even noticed by the company operating the Titanic, the White Star Line, which had 107 years of experience operating ships. Moreover, these mistakes were not even noticed by the company manufacturing the Titanic, Harland & Wolff, which had already manufactured over 500 ships before the Titanic. The construction of the Titanic started in 1909, and after about 3 years of time and the hard work of 2,000 workers, the ship was prepared. Now the ship was completely ready, but it still had to be tested. The confidence of the Titanic's builders was further boosted when the Titanic successfully passed its first test run. As soon as it passed the test, marketing was done in various newspapers around the world with the heading, "Unsinkable Titanic," meaning, an unsinkable ship has been built. Its first voyage was to start from the city of Southampton, England, scheduled for April 10, 1912, and its destination was the city of New York, USA. The price for traveling in a standard cabin on the Titanic was $30, while traveling in first class had suites and parlors, which in today's era amounts to $3,400. As a result of this marketing, all tickets were suddenly booked, and finally, the day arrived when the Titanic was about to begin its first voyage. Mistake number 1. At exactly 12 o'clock noon, the Titanic began its first voyage, and simultaneously, the mistakes made by Tata started coming to light. Captain Smith had already received a deadline from the company that, under any circumstances, they had to reach New York in just 7 days by April 17. Because of this, the captain had kept the ship's speed very high from the beginning, and this was the very first mistake of the Titanic. Due to the instructions and pressure from the owners, Captain Smith had to reach New York as soon as possible because this was the Titanic's first voyage, and if it did not arrive in New York on time, the Titanic's reputation would be severely damaged. Any vehicle, machine, or ship in the world has several operating procedures, of which speed limit is a part, and that part was violated right at the start of the voyage. Soon, the ship left the port of Southampton so far behind that now, apart from the blue sea, nothing was visible far and wide. Mistake number 2. Now, 3 days had passed since the Titanic had been sailing. Apart from a brief stop in France and Ireland, the Titanic had been continuously moving towards New York for the past 72 hours. It was the evening of April 14, 1912. Silence and fog covered the sea everywhere, due to which visibility had also reduced significantly. That same night, another merchant ship, which was just a few hours ahead of the Titanic, had given a warning on the wireless to the Titanic about floating rocks, i.e., icebergs, on the sea. Experts believe that this warning was given at least 6 times, but due to the carelessness of the wireless operators, this extremely important warning was missed. For them, it was perhaps a normal matter, but this was the second mistake that led to the Titanic's tragedy. Because the Titanic was the first luxury ship of its kind and many VIPs were present on it, most of the wireless traffic was busy serving first-class passengers. If they had taken these warnings seriously, Mistake number 3. The ship's speed was high, and they had already missed a very important warning. The Titanic was now rapidly and fearlessly entering the range of the iceberg. But even now, the Titanic could have been saved by hand because the ship's lookouts were alert, ready to inform the captain as soon as they spotted any ice from afar. But they did not have one thing available to see from a distance, and that thing was binoculars. Yes, the lookouts were alert, but due to the lack of binoculars, they could not see from afar, and this was the Titanic's third mistake. Captain Smith received the news when the ship's lookouts reported that right in front of the ship was an iceberg the size of a football field. But now it was too late because the iceberg had come extremely close. Mistake number 4. Because ships in the Atlantic Ocean often have to face icebergs, which large merchant ships handle easily, perhaps Captain Smith thought the same. Upon receiving the news, Captain Smith ordered the ship's engines to be stopped and also ordered the Titanic to change course. Although Captain Smith tried very hard to avoid the iceberg, the distance was so short that any effort proved futile. The iceberg had now collided with the center of the Titanic. But there was still a lot of hope that the Titanic could be saved. This hope remained that perhaps the iceberg would not damage the ship's body, or that due to the collision, it would break apart on its own. And perhaps that would have happened if the Titanic's fourth mistake had not shown its effect. Experts believe that the rivets on the Titanic's body were not made of steel but of cast iron. The job of these rivets is to keep large iron pieces joined together. But cast iron becomes brittle in cold. Because of this, the rivets at the place where the iceberg collided with the Titanic's body opened due to pressure, and then what Captain Smith feared happened. Mistake number 5. The Titanic had collided with an iceberg the size of a football field, and now water had started filling the lower part of the ship. This dangerous collision had alerted the entire crew and passengers, and along with them, the Titanic's owner, Joseph Bruce Ismay. Although water had started filling the Titanic, there was still hope that the Titanic could be saved because the Titanic was designed such that even if 3 floors were flooded, it would not sink. But unfortunately for this ship, water had now reached the 4th floor, crossing 3 floors. Now the matter was out of hand. The Titanic was slowly sinking into the ocean. Now, without worrying about the ship, it was time for the passengers present to save their lives. Captain Smith issued an emergency alert on the radio. Until help arrived, a plan was made to shift the passengers into lifeboats. But at this moment, the 5th mistake showed its effect. Yes, there was space for a total of 32 lifeboats on the ship, but due to carelessness, only 20 were kept. There were 1,500 passengers and only 20 boats. Mistake number 6. There was chaos everywhere, and every person wanted to board the few available boats. At 12:45, the first emergency boat was lowered into the sea. But here, a 6th mistake occurred. In the chaos, the boats were lowered into the sea without being fully filled, with most preference given to first-class passengers. That is, those who were wealthier were seated first. If more passengers had been seated in the boats, fewer human lives would have been lost. The Titanic was now rapidly sinking into the sea. At 2:18, due to a short circuit, all the lights on the Titanic went out, and the next moment, the ship broke into 2 pieces. Thus, it took 2 hours and 40 minutes for the Titanic to sink completely into the sea, and in this way, 16 people drowned in the cold water of the Atlantic Ocean. Let me tell you one more thing. The water temperature at that time was 2 degrees Celsius. That is, even if the passengers jumped into this cold water, there was no chance of survival because humans cannot survive for more than 30 minutes at such low temperatures. It is said that the death toll was even higher than 1,500 because many people who were acquainted with the ship's workers had boarded the ship without tickets. Among the survivors, the highest number were children and women. On the other hand, Captain Smith spent the entire time helping people escape, and he was the last man to jump from the sinking ship. Hope you will like and share this Journey Unlocked video as well. Thank you for your loving comments. See